Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Wishes on Navratri, and thank you for joining us. This is 22nd research seminar by Center for Wisdom and Leadership by SPJIMR. This is a series that we host every month, and we invite young as well as senior researchers who are working in the area of spirituality, wisdom, leadership, and so on to share their research and to build conversations and group of interested researchers together. So today we have our own in-house colleague, my colleague, Dr. Kritika Manshani, and I will take a minute to introduce Dr. Kritika. She is currently a postdoctoral researcher with Center for Wisdom and Leadership at SPJIMR. She's also been associated with Ahmedabad University as an adjunct faculty. Dr. Kritika's academic journey includes PhD and MPhil from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, where she focused on leadership in Indian startup ecosystem, and she also developed a psychometric scale on leadership and humble leadership, basically, or leader humility. Dr. Kritika has presented her research at several reputed national conferences. Her works bring together academic rigor as well as practical insights into leadership in startup context. Today, Dr. Kritika will speak on humble leadership, balanced information processing, and employee engagement. So, her work will highlight how humility in leadership can inspire stronger engagement, trust, and inclusivity, which are actually very in, relevant for today's organization. So I welcome back again Dr. Kritika for this seminar. And over to you, Kritika. So the structure of this conversation is going to be like this, that around 45 minutes, 45 to 50 minutes, she will present her research, and post that we can have open forum where we can discuss. If we have any question, we can ask to Dr. Kritika. Over to you.
Thank you, Professor Jackie, for introducing me very well. I think now everyone kind of has an idea of what the presentation, what the seminar will hold. I will just start with presenting my screen. Yeah. Also, I will hide this so that it doesn't come in my system. Yeah, I think. So today I'm going to be presenting a part of my thesis with the title of Humble Leadership, Balanced Information Processing and Employee Engagement in the Indian Startup Ecosystem, a multi-level mediation model. Okay. So I want to start my research presentation with a short story to contextualize my entire research for you all. And the story is of Arav, who is a startup intern, where he joined when the company was very small, scrappy, and uncertain. From day one, Arav was high on engagement. Which set him apart with when he immersed himself in the discussions, asked sharp questions, and offered solutions beyond his role. His initial task was to just do the basic work like getting the photocopies or just writing the meeting notes. But slowly and gradually, as when Arav was attending the meetings, he actually had a lot of insightful questions to ask. And because the startup team was very small, Rahul, the founder, recognized Arav's potential and supported him by giving him opportunities to take on bigger challenges and voice in key decisions. Arav slowly and gradually climbed the ladder, and when the entire startup got the funding and the restructuring happened, he was brought on board as a co-founder. So this is the story of Arav and how high engagement, employees with high engagement in startup context, backed by leaders who are actually open to listen to their team members, interplay, and what impact it can have on the startup's growth and startup's success eventually. Now, because startup is a very high competitive and less resource environment, engagement acts as to be a very growth driver, wherein the incentives are less, the salaries may be less, the role fluidity is high, and everything. So engagement proves to be a very important driver for any of the startups, wherein all of the policies and everything is the same, but what drives is actually the people who are actually leading the startup, which actually makes or breaks any kind of startup. That could be one of the pivotal point when a startup can actually fly in or maybe lose or get closed down. So this is the story and context that I wanted to start my entire research with. I guess there is some problem. Yeah, I have to press it via the, okay. So talking about the Indian startup landscape, since 2014, the startup landscape has boomed in India. We have 41,000 recognized startups from DPIIT in 590 districts. 45% of the startups are in tier 2, tier 3 cities. These startups span across 54 sectors and are generating 460,000 plus jobs. So in the next decade, also startups are going to be booming and they are going to be developing and generating a lot of employment. Whereas the government's goal is also to create India as the global startup hub, with fast tracking the registration, promoting the innovation, job creation, and also reducing the tax slabs for startups. So government is actually pushing in a lot of policies to get entry into the startup ecosystem very easily. But despite that, the success rate happens to be 10%. And that is because of high uncertainty and failure risk. That's exactly that we're going to be understanding of why it is happening and this is basically what we can do to reduce or maybe to increase the success rate and slash the failure rate of the startups. And why I choose India is because it is an emerging economy. The entrepreneurial dynamism is high. We are resource constrained, but high on innovation. So, which is why Indian startup landscape happens to be a very lucrative area to actually research on. Now, understanding the role of engagement in startup ecosystem, like I mentioned, we are resource constraints when startup actually functions on very limited capital, limited financial capital and human capital, which amplifies the value of employee contributions. High role fluidity, because as a startup, as an employee in a startup, one day you're doing some tasks, another day you're doing another task. So there's a lot of high role fluidity, but at the same time, there is a lot of scope of learning new skills that one can acquire and maybe eventually lead their path on the way up. Direct leader and employee proximity in startups, because the structure is flat. There are not a lot of hierarchies. The interaction between the founder, here leader, and employee are high, wherein you learn from the leader and founder a lot, whereas at the same time, the founder's vision is also very much important, that communicates down to the team members. Innovation and learning dependencies, startups thrive on experimentation. Today, you are developing one of the prototype, tomorrow you're pivoting to something else. So there is a lot of erraticness and uncertainty happening over there, which is why engagement, you have employees in startups have to be high on engagement to be able to absorb and also be okay and flexible with what comes their way. Which is why early its engagement builds a sense of ownership, identification. With the venture, this dynamic can transform employees into entrepreneurs or even co-founders, making engagement central to long-term success. So which is why studying these early on teams are very important, wherein we can understand and maybe diagnose if startups are going to be, they are going to live longer than the 10%, or they're going to be dying, which is like the 5-year mark that usually any of the startup dies. Which is why studying engagement is kind of important. Whereas looking at the leader, the founder, there is actually a myth that the startup founder is of a personality that has a lot of heroic vision, wherein they have an unshakable amount of confidence. And also the media and investors celebrate charismatic, ego-driven leaders as the key startup success. Whenever we imagine a startup founder, we always imagine the startup founder as someone who is like a magnanimous personality driving in large SUVs and all of that. But that's now it's like Why it's misleading? It could be like founder ego can create a misalignment and poor collaboration. And also a lot of research has been done on a new and upcoming area of which is actually the founder bubble, wherein the overconfidence can lead to blind spots and poor decision making. But the reality is what we want to look at is a startup founder is not a heroic or ego driven, but is actually a humble leader who is open to feedback, acknowledges limitations, and appreciates team contribution. It promotes engagement, innovation, and sustainable performance for the startup to live longer. Whereas collaborative founders build resilient startups and foster creativity. So this is how this is where the entire research is kind of located, wherein we want to understand like what is the interplay of the leader who is the founder with the team members, which are the important team members, and how this interplay is kind of happening in the Indian startup ecosystem. Let's look at the leadership dynamics in startups and SMEs, like how it is different from the organizations who have larger hierarchies. Like I mentioned, startups have lower and flatter hierarchies, and leaders are often the founders or the co-founders. Their personal style defines the organization culture. If the startup founder is very conscientious or very extroverted, that is something that you will see in the startups, and that is something that you will see in the teams, wherein maybe there is an open door policy wherein anyone can come in and walk in the founder's office and voice their opinion or present their suggestions. So this is exactly how leadership dynamics is in startup ecosystem, whereas compared to organizations wherein the hierarchy is little higher when and team member who at the very lower level wants to voice their opinion, maybe customer feedback, because they're front ending. That might take a little longer to reach to the higher level, and then execution and decision making would take a longer time. Execution will take a longer time, and by that time they have kind of missed the bus. But in startups, it's not the case. It's hyper competitive, wherein the decisions are taken faster, they're appreciated more. So leadership is like that. And I also mentioned like high role fluidity. Employees wear multiple hats, rely heavily on leader guidance, and informal decision making and resource scarcity increase the impact of leaders' fairness and inclusivity. So this is something that we will eventually build on, but in startups, how the leader involves the team members in taking decisions is something which is important and to be looked at, which actually proves to be a very good indicator of the engagement. Starter requires rapid yet sound decision under uncertainty. Like you have to be very fast with decision making, which is why we're also going to be studying balanced information processing, which is objectively analyzing inputs, considering multiple viewpoints of the team members while taking decision. And this is where humble leader actually seeks feedback and gets the diverse perspective and enhances the decision making in the entire fast changing markets. So this is how the leadership dynamics is when in a startup as compared to an organization. What actually drives engagement? Engagement, like if we talk about engagement, it reflects the vigor, it is dedication and absorption in the work completely. It is influenced by leadership, job design, culture, teams, individual traits, and context. So in startup ecosystem, it's kind job design is kind of vague. Essentially, why is engagement important? It actually it results into high performance, motivation, and resilience, which is the air that the startups actually breathe on. And what drives engagement? Leadership, management. A humble leader is when the leader is humble, it's open to feedback. It creates a lot of trust, psychological safety, meaningfulness of work, and also induces high quality LMX, which is actually very important and gives way to engagement. Team and peer dynamics improves the team's cohesion, wherein teams not only work like formally, but they actually work in tandem and together to finish and accomplish the goals that the startups have set for ourselves. It also shapes the organization culture and climate, high psychological safety, inclusivity, and fairness. So these are something that engagement drives. So this is why studying engagement in the startup ecosystem is according to me, important. And that's what we've studied in the, yeah. Now I want to work for some time. I want to focus on balanced information processing, how this could be like a bridge between the leadership style and the team members. So here we're studying teams as a separate unit, team members as separate unit, and leaders as separate unit. Between how BIP can be, so moving forward, I will be calling balanced information as BIP. It's a little longer in the saying again and again. So BIP as a bridge between leader and individual followers. When leaders engage in BIP, follower perceive that their perspectives are acknowledged, leading to high psychological empowerment and trust. It also strengthens the LMX. Employees interpret leaders' deliberate decision making as signals of competence, fairness, respect, which enhances motivation and engagement. Now, between leader and team, it increases the task, goals, and challenges. It increases the shared understanding of task, goals, and challenges by inducing team collaboration, critical thinking, openness, and fostering a very cohesive and psychologically safe team climate. So that's how BIP could be like a bridge between leader and teams, and leader and individuals. Now, understanding and studying, so a lot of studies in the literature where I was actually doing the LR, I actually found how humble leadership is studied in silos, wherein some studies have seen that its impact on just organization factors, some have seen on teams, and some have seen on individuals. So what I argue over here is we have to see it collectively. We have to consider all of the factors, team factors, the individual factors, and also the leader factor to be able to understand how this interplay is actually happening. So when I saw the humble leaders effects on organization, it came that the humble leaders is actually linked to better strategic decision making, innovation, firm performance. Whereas for teams, it has an impact on teams' social capital, and such leaders reduce competitive comparison and elevate collective goals, wherein all of the goals, the company's goal are equal to the individual goals. And individual psychological safety, proactive behavior, then also innovative work behavior. A lot of studies have also seen the individual. But here in the study, we are going to be seeing how all of these come together, and they explain the impact of humble leader on the engagement. The theoretical lens that I've used is SIPT, social information processing theory, explains how employees interpret workplace cues. Humility signals inclusion, fairness, learning, shaping both individual perceptions and team climates. These cues are actually accepted by the teams, which shapes team climate, which shapes team cohesion and team engagement. And it also shapes the individual perception of how the startup is and how my leader is. So this theory actually helps us understand the cross-level effect of leaders on teams, leaders on individuals, and engagement is enhanced when employees perceive leaders as thoughtful, respectful, and empowering. So it's kind of what I emit as a humble leader, how it is being communicated through fairness, decision-making procedures, and acknowledging others' involvement and processes in the decision formation, and how it increases the engagement of the team as well as the team members. The research gaps identified with most humble studies focuses on large structured corporations, which is why Indian startup ecosystem is actually the main context of this entire study. When I was actually studying, I was just going through the articles wherein this was explored in larger organization. And like clearly large organization startups, they kind of don't function very much similar to like, and limited evidence in entrepreneurial, flatter structure, high growth contexts like Indian MSMEs and startups. underexplored cognitive mechanisms like BIP linking to humility outcomes, and cross-level impact, which actually is what this entire study is trying to answer. So we identified three specific questions that we want to answer through this particular study. To what extent humble leadership influence employee engagement in the context of Indian startups and MSMEs, where organizations are informal, resource constrained, and founder driven. RQ2, does leaders BIP mediate the relationship between humble leadership and employee engagement in startups and MSMEs? And the effect of humble leadership and BIP, how does it unfold across multiple organization levels in entrepreneurial ventures? Starting with the hypothesis, so these are the specific hypotheses that I developed. First is the cross level, wherein I propose that team level humble leadership is positively related to employee engagement. I'm not getting in depth with the logical argument because I think I have made up my arguments previously. But teams here, when I talk about team level humble leadership, I'm here talking about the team's perception of humble leadership of their startup founders, how that impacts their employee engagement. A lot of studies have seen that it impacts the intrinsic motivation and meaningfulness of their work. This is portrayed through by humble leaders acknowledging their limitations, appreciating followers' contribution, and being open to feedback. And we see this with the lens of, again, SIPT theory. Yeah. The hypothesis, another hypothesis that I have here is team's perception of humble leadership is positively related to team level engagement also as a collective. So like we saw how humble leadership has an impact on team's cohesion, team's climate, and collective engagement. So which is why we want to also study how whether team level leadership is, if it is positively related to team level engagement. Individual perceptions of here, individual perceptions like I am in a team, and if my team's perception about humble leader is that how it impacts my own employee, how it impacts my own engagement, whereas now how I see personally as an individual, as a single unit, how I see also impacts my perception, how I this is a little confusing, how individual perception of humble leadership is positively related to employee engagement. So team's perception is also related to my own individual engagement, and my own perception is also kind of related to my own engagement. Then now we bring in the bridge in between, which is team's perception of leaders' balanced information processing as the mediator. Humble leaders' openness and acknowledgement to others' contribution signal a learning-oriented style. Such behavior strengthens perception of BIP, the ability to fairly evaluate multiple viewpoints before taking decisions. Teams that view their leaders as deliberate and inclusive are more likely to feel respected, included, and safe, with high increases the collective engagement, this is actually the team level leaders balance information processing mediates the relationship between team level humble leadership and team level engagement. So this is like team's perception of humble leadership, team's perception of LBIP, and how it impacts the team's perception of, not perception, team's engagement. Coming on to the hypothesis 3B, team's perception of team level leaders balance information processing mediates the relationship between team level humble leadership and employee engagement. So this is like a cross level association and relationship that we're exploring, which says that shared perception of team level humble leadership shapes how individual interpret leader behaviors. If the teams view leaders as reflective and inclusive, individual employees are more likely to perceive fairness, clarity, and respect in decision making. Also, cultural collectivism further amplifies the spillover effect. So India being more on the collectivist side, it actually has like a spillover effect of the entire team engagement and teams entire team's perception about the leader and their own personal engagement. Individual perception, my own perception of LVIP as a mediator. At the individual level, perceptions of humble leader create expectations about leaders' decision-making style. Employees infer that humble leaders engage in balanced information processing by deliberate, fair, and inclusive evaluation of alternatives. In collective settings like India, perceptions of fairness and reflection carry extra weight, making this pathway even more salient. So by this 4A, individual perception of leaders BIP mediates the relationship between team level humble leadership and the employee engagement. And lastly, individual perception of LVIP as a mediator that mediates the individual person, my own perception to my own engagement. So here we have, so once I actually show the model, it will make more sense of all the hypotheses. So individual perception, my own individual perception of how balanced information processing of of the leader impacts my own perception of the humble leader, and it has an impact on my own employee engagement. HLT, what is the team's perception? It shapes my LVIP, how I perceive the leader, and also has an impact on my own engagement. How teams see how teams see how a humble leader is, it impacts the balanced information processing of the team overall, and how it has an impact on the employee. And the same at the level 2, whereas the team's perception of humble leadership shapes the LVIPT and how it actually explains and impacts the team's engagement. So this is how we have hypothesized our model, and we're trying to explore in the Indian startup ecosystem. Sample characteristics for the participants were 100 startup teams, 389 team members across Bombay, Delhi, Ahmedabad, Bangalore. Industries were technology, media, business service, education, and healthcare. The selection, we had like a strict selection criteria for the startups that we actually included in the study, that they should be operational for at least 3 years, should have 20 full-time employees, and the average team size that we took was 4 team members in one startup. The team tenure, that the number of years that they should be working together, would be 2 years. And individual was 2.15. The team gender split was 76% male and 34% female. We wanted to focus on a founder-team interaction in fast-moving entrepreneurial settings. So how we did was we reached out to the startup founders. Then based on that, the founders suggested 4 to 5 of their team members who he or she on a daily basis works on. And then we initiated and we shared a questionnaire with them, and then they returned back the questionnaire by filling it. We approached 335 founders in Indian startup networks. Final sample was 120, not 20 startup founders, that's a typo. 120 startup founders, respective 420 team members, diverse sectors and geographies. Like I mentioned, we sent an email. They came back to us with 4 to 5 team members working on them on a closed basis. We then shared the questionnaire, and that's how the data collection was done. The constructs and the measures used in the study were, for humble leadership, we used Owens et al. And the alpha was 0.94, which is actually good. 10 item scale, 5-point Likert scale, 10 items, 5-point Likert scale, BIP, which is actually the subdimension of authentic leadership, developed by Avolio and Gartner. It was 4-item scale, 5-point Likert scale. Employee engagement, we use the ITRECH 9 developed by Shefali in 2006. 9-item scale and 5-point Likert. The control variables we used were team members' age, gender, team size, personality, extraversion, and consensus. So these were the control variables that we took. Then first, before starting a data collection, before starting our analysis, we did a CFA, wherein we saw the convergent validity, discriminant validity, and of the individual level constructs. So here's the table. Now my screen is visible now for this table. Okay. The Cronbach alpha was 0.92. The SRMR was point. So this was it. Everything as per the acceptable value. Cronbach alpha was 0.92 for HL, humble leadership. LBIP 0.0885, and for employee engagement was 0.82. Then degrees of freedom was for humble leadership was 2.411, LBIP 3.914, employee engagement 1.670, SRMR was also acceptable. Yeah, so it was kind of good to go. Then after that, we actually initiated. So after that, after performing the CFA, we did the data aggregation checks to create these team level constructs. So we aggregated the team members' responses on humble leadership, perceptions of humble leadership, LBIP, and employee engagement. For that, we saw RWG, which actually explains the aggregation, and if all of the team members agree on something. ICC1 and ICC2, interclass correlation, to confirm non-independence and reliability. That is what we saw. No, I have also these are the aggregation results. For humble leadership, mean RWG was 0.81, ICC 1.375, ICC 2.7 for humble leadership. That actually confirms that, okay, we can aggregate all of the 4 data units and we can create one construct. For LBIP also similar, mean RWG was 0.77, ICC 1.38, ICC 0.705. And employee engagement, mean RWG was 0.96, ICC 1.261, ICC 0.578. So adequate within team consensus and between team variability was found. So we aggregated the 3 constructs and we took it to the L2 level. That explains why we could see cross-level effects on it. I'm going to go back. We also did a measurement model for CFA. The CFA results showed good fit. The RMSCA was 0.071. 0.071, SRMR was 0.052, GFI 0.90, CFI 0.931. P-value was less than 0.001. So the measurement model in CFA in EMOS was also indicating towards a good model fit. Our approach to actually test the hypothesis was multi-level. Because the nature of data was nested and structured, individuals at L1 and team at L2. We followed the Zhang et al. Multi-level mediation approach, addressed 3 models. 211, wherein L2 antecedent, L1 mediator, and L1 outcome. 221, L2 antecedent, L2 mediator, and L1 outcome. And 111, L1 antecedent, L1 mediator, and L1 outcome. So in this mediation, we took an approach of CWC mean approach by centering all of the variables because this data was nested and structured. So we did not wanted any kind of potential confounding. So we approached the CWC M approach. This ensures accurate estimation of indirect effects in multi-level settings. So that's the approach that we followed, given by Zhang et al. First, we performed a null model. There is a need of null model, which actually justifies if there are any kind of impact of the L2 variables on L1. So the ICC for that was 0.26. 26% of the variance was explained by team membership. Usually it is around above, if it is above 5%, we kind of go ahead for a multi-level model. So because it was 26, so it justified seeing the impact of team level constructs on the individual level. So we went ahead and did that. Then we actually, so this is actually the hypothesis results, wherein first we saw the normal mediation, HLT, which is actually at the level 2, HLT on LBIPT, which was significant, HLT on team engagement, which was also significant, LBIPT, again, significant. So that hypothesis was supported. I will eventually talk about the hypothesis, just that I'm explaining this particular table over here. So this, all of the effects, all of the relationships at the level 2 level were supported. Next is 2 to 1, wherein two of the antecedents we are seeing at antecedent and mediator we are seeing at the second level, and the employee engagement. So that was also kind of supported. All of the three were significant. Then coming at 22211, which were again supported, and then only one of it over here, if you can see, it was negatively significant. So they were significant, but they were negative. So this was something, a finding that we kind of, this gives way to our future studies that we could do. This was actually the 4B, which was significant but negatively. So that explained how, if the leader is very humble, if the levels are very high, how it can negatively impact the employee engagement levels. Yeah, so this was the hypothesized results of the hypothesized model. The results of control variables were like, for age, older employees, so it was small positive effect. Older employees may have more experience, role clarity, and coping skills, enhancing engagement. So higher in the age, I guess, better the engagement. That's what it emerged from the study. Team size, so slight negative effect. Larger teams can reduce visibility, recognition, and coordination, slightly lowering the engagement. So that actually stands true that too many cooks might spoil the broth. Extraversion, positive effect, energetic, socially proactive employees engage more through active participation in relationship building. Consentiousness also had positive effect. Organized, goal-oriented employees sustain effort and absorption, boosting engagement. Gender had no consistent effect. So that was something that we didn't find out. Overall role, controls retained to isolate main predictor. We also saw this in the main multi-level model. We retained them in our final model as also, and this is the results that we kind of saw. So I think employees who are a little higher on age, little extroverted, higher on extroversion, and little higher on conscientiousness can be better employees and might lead eventually to founding teams or higher levels of teams. The key finding, humble leadership significantly enhances employee engagement at both individual and team levels in the context of Indian startup ecosystem. BIP consistently mediates these effects. The way leaders evaluate information fairly and thoughtfully is a key mechanism that drives engagement. Employees interpret humble leaders as such as openness, acknowledgement of contribution, self-awareness, and positive signals, shaping how they perceive and engage in their work environment. At the team level, shared perception of leader humility fosters collective climate psychology, psychological safety, and motivation, amplifying engagement across members, and also at the individual level. However, an interesting negative indirect effect emerged when humility was expressed through excessive deliberation. It sometimes reduces the ambiguity. This suggests that possible cognitive overload or ambiguity effect, where followers may interpret overcautious decision making as indecisiveness or lack of direction. So here, maybe we could also explore the dynamic of Gen Zs, because they want things very faster. So this could be one of the reasons. These findings highlight dual nature of humility's impact, and emphasize the need to understand its boundary condition in entrepreneurial contexts. The rapid growth of India's startup ecosystem between 2014 and 2023 has created a fertile ground for studying leadership and employee engagement in high uncertainty environment. Despite government policy support and initiative aimed at establishing India's global startup hub, the overall success rate remains around 10% due to inherent uncertainty and high failure risk. This context underscores importance of understanding the mechanism that contribute to startup resilience and performance. An employee's contribution is amplified, making engagement not as just a desirable attribute, but as a strategic imperative and strategic asset for any particular startup. Overemphasis on founder ego can harm team dynamics, reduces collaboration and contribution to decision making. Blindly, it spots a phenomena described as a founder bubble, that they are living into a kind of a bubble wherein they are not addressing and looking and listening to what other people are saying, and such dynamism may hinder knowledge sharing, risk taking, learning capabilities that are essential for survival and growth in uncertain and innovation driven environment. Theoretical implications, contextual contributions. So this study extends leadership research to the underexplored setting of Indian startup ecosystem. Multi-level influence. We saw a cross-level effect of the team level, and also how it impacts the individual level. We also explored the cognitive mechanism of BIP as a mediator, that the study opens as the black box of how humble leader translates into engagement. So this was the theoretical implications that this particular study had. So this particular study will actually have a good amount of practical implications to understand leader selection and hiring. What things, so this will be an answer to what things a startup can look for when hiring team members or employees for them, and also assess them on the levels of humility. So humility could be checking and diagnosing humility at a very young point could be proved to be a better and giving back to them kind of in the longer run, kind of an approach for them, wherein they are diagnosing at a very early age. Decision making, better decisions could be from this could reduce over deliberation and decision paralysis, wherein a mechanism where the startup founder includes all of the team members, takes opinions and voices of all of their team members as small and as young as an intern, could prove to be a better pointer for better decision making for startups and teams. Team spillover effect, humble leadership behavior extends beyond individuals, shaping collective motivation and engagement. Maintaining consistency across interaction and therefore critical for reinforcing team climate and also for leadership development. So startups usually leadership development fund is actually at the last, but what I feel is it should be the first, wherein they are training themselves to become better leaders. Also, not all. So there is a thing that I believe, that all leaders can be good entrepreneurs, but not all entrepreneurs can be good leaders. So this is where this particular study could be used of, and maybe in the startup and MSME domains, humility can reduce the hierarchical difference, strengthens group cohesion, and several, and humility could be like a strategic asset for these startups. So these are the practical implications. Limitation cross-sectional design. The study's cross-sectional nature restricts casual inference. Longitudinal or experimental design are recommended to establish temporal precedence and casual relationships. So this is actually something that this is the way forward, wherein we can study humility at various longer levels to understand how it is actually unfolding, not at one period, but at several points. Cultural self-report measures, like here a little bit of self-other analysis kind of would have been done, so it could have been better, wherein humility scores rated by the teams where could be pitted towards against the leaders rating themselves. But as Tanjanis in his paper in 2009 says, that a humble leader will never mark himself or herself as humble. So here there is a limitation that I feel while we study humility always comes into account about self-report measures. And the findings are grounded in Indian startup and MSMEs context and may not generalize to Western or individualistic cultures. It's relevant to India. I don't know about the Western applicability of it. Yeah, so I think more or less points I've covered. I would want to, for future research directions, more moderators could, interplay of moderators could also explain this entire interplay a little better, wherein leader decisiveness, team time pressure, or followers personality trait, not as a control, but as a moderator could have been understood and explained. Cross-cultural studies wherein we are exploring the effects of humble leadership both in individualistic versus collectivist culture, expanded outcomes. Maybe it could be, we could understand the role of engagement, how it proceeds further into innovation, learning behavior, resilience, or employee voice. And lastly, this is stemming from the negative significant effects of 4B as an hypothesis, wherein we can examine how followers distinguish genuine humility with performative displays and the implication of trust and engagement, wherein too much humility is also seen as negative and thinking very lowly of oneself. Yeah, I guess I've spoken enough. So I just want to conclude with this is what the research kind of comes to a point at a standstill. Whereas if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go together. So startups is initiated by this founder's vision, but it is executed with the team and all of the entire startups employees. So yeah, that was the entire study about. Any questions are welcome, or any suggestions are welcome.
Excellent presentation, Dr. Kritika. So forum is open for questions, feedback, anything you would like to share. Anyone?
Hi, Kritika.
Hello.
A brilliant presentation. Just had a question. You have taken your sample as startups who have completed more than 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Do you think, or does your study take into consideration startups who are early on? Like 3 years is a time when they are kind of fairly established, not completely, but yeah, fairly established. Do you think humility may not play a role when they are less than 3 years? Do you think it makes more sense where I'm very aggressive? I don't want to share information with others because I'm just starting a boss.
Sharing information, what I feel when I say sharing information is not sharing maybe what the idea is about or what the product is about. It's not about that. It's about how you are able to communicate your values. Like if, for example, if you are very self-aware about yourself, you will communicate to that. And when you talk or when you interact, it will see that you will get to know that, okay, I am self-aware. I know what my limitations are, what my strengths are. So, and before 3 years, what I really feel is to understand this entire play for startups, this humility being into play. I could actually do that by just using founders data, but I didn't want it to do that because I wanted to understand the humility interplay in the team members. So if the team members think my founder is humble or not, that's when actually it makes sense to study humility rather than just asking the founders, do you find yourself as humble?
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Kritika, I have a question. I really love the presentation. While I was just thinking, because it's a part of your thesis, right? So when you spoke to founders or whoever, how did they define humility? Because you made a very interesting statement when you said that, in self-report questionnaires, humble leaders will not say they are humble, and that makes sense as well. So how did your participants or your sample, how did they define humility?
So we used this Owens scale to measure humility. So at the same time, I also collected data from the founders also. So they also reported themselves on the levels of humility also. So in that particular items, there is no word as humble. Because you can't use the word humble when you're asking about being humble. I
Correct.
also interviewed them. I also interviewed 20, 25 founders as a part of my thesis also to understand what is their thinking like what do they think about being a leader. I in no way in my interview I asked or mentioned the word humble because that is not something that I can do. I asked them, are you self-aware? Or are you open to others' opinions? So this is like an explanation and definition about humility, but nowhere any word of being humble or humility was used, because then it kind of could have created a bias for them that okay, it could be about humility, and I want to answer that makes me look as a humble person.
Yeah. That
So
would be counterintuitive. Yeah.
So what I asked them was, so during I was doing these interviews, it was the time of COVID. So to understand what is their approach, I asked them like, what are you doing to, this is the time wherein you want to support your team members and not think about making profits or the startup growth. You just have to sustain in COVID times or in any kind of crisis times. So I asked them, what are some of the approaches to maintain? So one of the founders, she said that this time I'm making use of to invest in my team members by giving them an extra fund wherein they can order books, they can take online courses, they can join webinars and all of that. So that quality would reflect in being humble, wherein I want to support to my team members and not just let them go because I have to do cost cutting.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful presentation, Kritika.
Thank you, Professor.
So 2 points from my perspective. First, as you said, in your limitation that common method bias could be a problem because it is self-reported measure. So have you done something to take care of that? Or maybe it will come from the reviewer side for sure if you have submitted this paper.
At that time, I didn't really think about it, but now I've started thinking about it.
So one thing is at the design stage, but since all the design has taken place, you have collected data. But I think we have previously talked that there is a scope of introducing some latent variables. You will find out from the methodology that you can introduce that and connect it with all the variables and how you can, after the post analysis, as a post hoc analysis, how you can take care of that. Second point, you got one negative relationship that you were talking.
Yes.
Was it in the was it as per hypothesis or it was in opposite direction?
In opposite direction. What I proposed was it would be positive, but what results came that it was negative. But this is where the limitation of humility is, that too much humility is also not accepted well and could have like a counter effect. So the definition of humility itself is that you should be self-aware in the sense wherein you should be knowing your weaknesses, you should be knowing your strengths. If you are humble, if you focus on your strengths more, you kind of know, you kind of take care what your weaknesses is. But agar aap bahut zyada hi weaknesses pe wo ho jayega and let it overpower, then it kind of, people start taking advantage of you and it could and people could think that, okay, the founder has no bone and I can take the decision in place of founder, or founder doesn't know anything. So it could lead to that also. So I think that is actually a very good way of proposing future relationships
So
in.
I think with the same data, you can try to think of checking off a non-linear relationship, which could
Okay.
be inverted U relationship. That is
Okay.
from starting from zero level of humility leadership to up to certain extent, it would be a positive relationship. And then up to certain threshold, as you are saying that at a very high level of humility, then your arguments make sense. And so it gives you a direction that you can test for inverted U relationship with the same.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be actually a very good suggestion that I can maybe use in my.
Try to put the square terms of your IVs and try to check for that.
So,
Yeah.
so this is kind of out of context, but this entire phenomena of what is a threshold wherein humility could be good and bad. This was actually the main reason why we tried to develop a scale to measure humility. That at what point we wanted to find a threshold point. Okay, at this place this is good, but beyond that, if you go, it could lead to have negative effects. So this was, and that is something, that work is also something that is in the progress, wherein we are trying to maybe develop a scale and conceptualize humility, entrepreneurial humility in some manner.
Okay, good. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can, Kritika,
Yes.
amazing. It's the first time that I have read your whatever you have written, but the first time I see you presenting, so it's like very well done. Yeah, so congrats on that. Now I have two questions which are not strictly within the field of what you research, but a little bit on the frontiers, both on the outcomes. So the first question is about engagement to success rate, right? I know it's a longitudinal and so on, but did you have some info on how much, let's say, among this startup that you studied, then after this, let's say 1, 2, or 3 years after your study and your data collection, what is the success rate, and is there something there that you got?
Oh, not really, sir. I did not get any kind of this thing, but what I feel is startup employees, when they work, they don't work for salary. They don't
Yeah.
work for incentives. They don't work for stability. They are actually opposites. Salary, incentives, stability is actually opposites for startups. Even for the founder, not for just the team members. So what is that something that drives them to work? Maybe a skill to learn at the younger age, okay. But after certain age, like we saw, the more the age, the better the engagement. So I am assuming that better engagement could lead to better startup decision making and better startups being more successful in terms of growing in their life and growing in their performance.
Okay, yeah. So I know it's an area outside the scope of what you have done, but I was curious about this. Second question about the number of, you said among 300 and something, you had 120, right?
120 startup founders and
Yes.
respective 4 to 5 team members that accounted for 389. No, sorry,
Okay.
420.
Yeah. Just to get an idea of this, I mean, maybe it's a naive question, but out of this 120, how many of them were like, as self-reported by them, really, truly, I mean, there was really humility or not?
So as a part of my thesis, I did a little other analysis. So
Okay.
out of 100, so 120, from 120, we disregarded 20 because they were half filled. So only 100. So
Okay.
100, actually, there were some 65%. They rated themselves low
Okay.
on humility.
Yeah.
And 35 or 37 something, they reported average. No one rated like, I am
Okay.
very humble. Oh, I am good at this. So that itself tells me that, okay, if you're not rating yourself like as high, that means there is some kind of levels of humility inside you residing that is stopping you to put that, take on that particular thing.
Yeah, and that also can be argued because,
Yeah.
I mean, you did not inflate your perception of your own immunity, but why not saying, let's say, lucidly, as much as you can assess yourself, what do you think you are, right? And so that is another discussion. Now, last question is about the antecedents of humility itself. So when you are discussing with these people, because you had not just this questionnaire, but some discussion with them. So could you share, I mean, try to have a kind of insights, okay, into what built their level of immunity. So what were the factors who brought that? Yeah.
Yeah. So to understand that, I asked them, why did you pick this entrepreneurial path? I asked them. So
Okay.
so there was this lady, female startup founder that I was interviewing. What her reason for becoming a founder was the 2008 financial crisis that had happened. So she lost her job on the personal front. On her personal front, she was going through separation in her marriage, and also she was a new mother. So, you know, all of these three things, she could have eventually succumbed to a lot of mental health problems, but then she came out of it. She started this venture. Not only she supported herself, but now she's a friend. She successfully runs like a 200 employee company based in Ahmedabad, and she tells that if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be here. I would still be struggling in some kind of job wherein I was not fulfilling my own potential. So maybe this could be, so this is humility uncovered in resilience and uncovered in growth kind of mindset. So humility, so people think humility is, oh, being modest. A lot of say, you know, you should be, humility is modesty. It's not. It's being more self-aware about what your strengths are. So she banked on her strengths. She knew that she could do something. She was good with finance. She was good with numbers. So she kind of did that. So some kind of antecedents, kind of what promotes humility could be studied, kind of thing that could be done, but not I have something that I included in this particular presentation, but I did account for it when I was doing my thesis.
Okay. Thank you, Kritika.
Welcome. Any suggestions on how I can make this better, or how this could lead to something new study would also be welcomed.
Maybe you can think of further antecedents of humility leadership or humble leadership. Have you researched the literature? Are there antecedents established?
But do you think there is a need to develop a scale to that can only measure entrepreneurial humility?
So what is your perspective about the items or indicators which are there in the scale that you are using?
It is general across the Western, it is general across the organization. But here we are talking about entrepreneurs.
So you are saying that it is humility leadership in general, not
Yes.
entrepreneurship
There
specific.
is a scale on entre leadership.
Yes,
Recently developed.
there is a scope, there is further scope if you feel that this humility leadership may have some further components, 2 or 3, then you have more logical basis to go for that, because then you can justify that the first, the existing skill is not specific to entrepreneurs, and second, the existing skill does not capture some of the elements which I think that could be included in humility leadership.
There are 3 dimensions, I guess 4 dimensions, no, 3 dimensions, which is being self-aware, modeling teachability, and openness to a contribution for humble leadership. But what about resilience? That's not part of the scale. That's not part of the definition also when we are conceptualizing about humble leadership. So
the existing scale is second order scale.
I guess, yeah.
So the components you have just described,
So these are subdimensions.
subdimensions.
Ah.
So these are there in the existing scale.
Yes, these three are there, but it doesn't talk about the resilience. It doesn't talk about being in a hyper competitive and high growth oriented marketplaces. It just talks about normal things.
There is possibility of adding, but you need to come from the literature.
Yeah.
You need to come from the literature. There must be some papers who are talking about that resilience should be a part of humility or humble leadership. Then only it makes basis. Either or if you go by your own, thought
I'm not talking
process.
about, so leadership could be like a part of this entrepreneurial humility. Resilience could be a part of it. I'm not saying entrepreneurial leadership. I'm saying entrepreneurial humility. Leadership could be like a small part of it, not the main. This scale that I have used is humble leadership. But what I am thinking on the lines is there something like entrepreneurial humility?
Maybe we can think of and discuss later.
Yeah.
So I would like to share my take on that. So, if humility manifesting in leaders in general or leaders in organizational context, and humility manifesting or operationalized in entrepreneurial context, if they are sufficiently different at conceptual or theoretical level, then only it makes sense to go for altogether new scale development. It may happen as I totally agree with what Professor Ravi said, that if there are maybe one or two subdimensions which you may want to add when humility is playing out in entrepreneurial context, then that will be better idea to go with that, or maybe few adaptation of few scales or few items may work there. Number two, when you talked about resilience, now the question is resilience a part of entrepreneurial humility or it is an outcome of entrepreneurial humility? If it is the outcome, then there is no question of going for scale development. If it is a part of humility, I'm not sure. As in, resilience itself is a different construct altogether, and humility is different. Of course, there can be a very strong relation or strong connection between them, but bringing resilience under the umbrella of humility, then we need a strong evidence either from literature or from something like grounded theory, or when we are talking about collecting, say, interviews and getting insights from entrepreneurs, then only it makes sense to take existing constructs into humility umbrella and saying humility is more like a meta construct in that sense.
I absolutely kind of agree.
Yeah. Great. So we had amazing discussion. Thank you, everyone, for contributing, asking questions, and thank you so much, Kritika, for wonderful presentation. I hope
Thank you for giving me
people
this
who will
opportunity.
watch this online will also derive a lot of value out of it. So we'll stay tuned. We will have some more guests coming up in next month, and we'll continue these conversations about research and wisdom in leadership. So thank you, everyone. Have a great time. Have a great Navratri.